Some of you see many checkpoint Charlies between the things religious and the things of government. And some of you say, no, no, no. That will sacrifice our republic if we have too many entryways. There is, if one, there should be none between the things religious and the things of government. That first picture, John Newton. The second picture, answering the persecuted Baptists in Danbury. The third picture happened on a Sunday, only a few days after New Year's Day, and it happened at the United States Capitol. Not the august Capitol that you know with the dome and the side entryways. There was only one side of the Capitol that was finished, and that is where the Senate met. The nation's library was there. The jurists met there too. And on a Sunday morning, there was a preacher. And in the corridors of the Capitol, a discernible Christian worship service was held. Not one Sunday, but every Sunday. The Word of God was read. The preacher spoke from the Torah and the Christian traditions. Prayer was shared. And John Leland, the Baptist pastor, he was invited to preach. And who was in the congregation? Several, including myself. Not every Sunday, but many Sundays. And some of you say, horrific. Horrific. There, the architect of the separation of church and state undercuts himself in the public precincts of our nation. We should not raise up one religious tradition over another. We should not have one religious tradition leading worship. They can be alongside the Capitol, but they should never be in the Capitol. Now, others of you say, but the Republic thrives only on a moral base derived from the Torah and the Christian traditions. And so you applaud that there was a worship service. I do not give you an easy resolution. It is easier to say crisply that I believed in the separation of church and state, but in actions I did not believe in the strict separation of religion and government. And you say, I am disappointed in you, President Jefferson, with your blazing intellect, with your integrity, with your knowledge of the classics and the scriptures, and your breadth of knowledge enveloping all of humanity. Why did you not become more clear? One reason might be because then you would not do your work as patriots. You would say, yes, in chapter here and line there, Jefferson explicated it, and you would repeat it as parrots. But because I was not so much less than clear, but because I used a figure of speech, the wall of separation between church and state, rather than a delineation like you find in a legal contract or in your telephone directories, there is an opaqueness. I believe that it is the good of the nation. It is good for the nation to have patriots like you in every age ride on my shoulders, but do exactly what I did in my day, wrestle with what I meant. And that is what you are called to do. And that's why gentlemen and women of goodwill and beneficent spirit, and those who charge their opponents with all kinds of rancorous and ugly conduct too, so that there are many, many debates, still you do believe that through your excited and animated and informed conversations on this point of what I meant by the separation of church and state, that from those gentle flames that you start will come a glowing arc, an arc that rises up to the heavens, an arc of truth, a truth that protects the sanctity of the state against the church, and the sanctity of the church against the state, and yet allows for great and good conversation between the things religious and the things of government, for the good of you, patriots, and for the good of the Republic's experiment. And with that, I bid you adieu. I see some consenting eyes, and quite frankly, I see some flaming eyes. Some who agree and some who disagree. Come now, it can be about my presentation for just a few minutes. Any questions? Or some of you might say, I'm sadly disappointed. I was so excited about meeting the third President of the United States, but he didn't talk about a topic that I was interested in. Then if you ask me something of another portion of my life, I will try to be honest with you. Come now, what questions might you have? Yes, patriots.
When you ask your question, please go to the microphone in the center so, out of courtesy to all, we can hear the question.
Would you tell us, Mr. Jefferson, of your impressions of George Washington?
President Washington gave cohesion to the nation. When the colonies were so split and their identities were subsumed within their own territories, he was a governing architect that said, the Union goes before the several states. You know that I served in his cabinet. You know that there was another politician from New York, Alexander Hamilton. I must say that he had writing ability that outdistanced even my own in speed. He could articulate thoughts. He really won over Washington, so that Washington sided more with John Adams and with Hamilton and with the Federalists. In times of terror especially, he said, we must have a strong executive, a strong president. I said, and I fell out with Washington on this point as I felt that he sided with Hamilton, I said, whether there are times of terror or good times, the locus of power within a republic should not be lodged in one person. Are we not backing into a monarchy once again, I argue? How does the Constitution begin? I, the President of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union? We, the Supreme Court of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union? Come now, my friends, you know. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. But in times of terror, and I was worried about this, there is grasping intent from the presidency. And I said, no, it must be returned to the people whose voice is honored through their votes, sending people to the House and to the Senate. And so, I must be very honest with you. I admired President Washington for being the glue that held the disparate parts together. But I was very unhappy that his ear was cocked more towards Hamilton than toward myself. And so, I quit my post as Secretary of State in the second administration, and I went back to my family and my farm and my beloved books, Monticello.
Thank you, President Jefferson.